The sun sank over Pike County, Alabama, casting long shadows across the rolling farmland. Shadows that seemed to deepen the moment the phone rang that night in October 1974. It was a call no parent ever wants to receive. "Sarah and Rebecca aren't home yet," a neighbor whispered urgently. "They never made it." The voice on the other end was steady but terrified. That night marked the beginning of a mystery that would haunt a small community for decades. A mystery that refused to rest, that defied time, that made a quiet town question everything it thought it knew about safety, about innocence, and about evil hidden in plain sight. By 8:07 p.m. on October 17, 1974, identical twins Sarah and Rebecca Martinez, beloved daughters of Robert and Maria Martinez, had clocked out of Murphy's Diner where they worked. They walked familiar streets, past the courthouse square, down Pine Street. A 2-mile path they had walked together hundreds of times before. But that evening, the path led to nothing but silence. The last confirmed sighting was by Judith Abernathy, a pharmacy clerk, who remembered the girls buying a birthday card for their mother. They laughed. They smiled. They seemed perfectly ordinary. But after that moment, they vanished into thin air. The Martinez name was well known in Troy, Alabama, not because they were strangers, but because they belonged. In a place where Hispanic families were few, the twins stood out not for their difference, but for their kindness and their infectious joy. The town embraced them. They were high school favorites, diner staples, daughters and friends. But on that cold October night, everything changed. By midnight, a frantic call from the Martinez home confirmed the terrifying truth. They hadn't arrived home. Worry became panic. Panic became organized search parties. And soon, fear began to seep into every corner of the community. People think small towns are safe, but safety can be an illusion. Doors that were never locked before were suddenly bolted shut. Children weren't allowed outside after dinner. Rumors spread like a wildfire that refused to be contained. "Someone must have seen them," neighbors whispered. "Could it be someone from town?" others asked. The sheriff's department worked tirelessly. Deputies combed creek beds, abandoned barns, and overgrown trails. Posters with the twins' smiling faces plastered every store window, every light pole, every gas station. But night after night, the leads grew colder and the hope dimmed. The first significant lead revolved around a blue pickup truck, seen near Henderson's pharmacy around the time of their disappearance. The truck was traced to a local mechanic, James Whitley, but his alibi checked out. Other people of interest, a distant cousin, an ex-boyfriend, even a local mine owner, were investigated and eventually cleared. Months became years. Years turned into decades. The case fell into cold case purgatory. Files misplaced, leads forgotten, nightmares dressed up as folklore. But for the Martinez family, time did not dull the pain. Robert Martinez, once a respected coal mine foreman, converted his garage into a makeshift command center. He charted timelines, tracked sightings, and re-interviewed witnesses, driven by a father's unrelenting need for answers. Maria Martinez, devastated yet unbroken, set 2 plates at dinner every night and gazed out the window, waiting for the daughters who never returned. Their bedroom door remained closed, their belongings untouched, their memory sustained by hope that flickered stubbornly, refusing to die. After 45 years, it would take a routine patrol in an abandoned coal mine to shatter the silence and to rattle the very foundations of Pike County. On October 12, 2019, Deputy Marcus Tanner responded to what was expected to be a mundane trespass call at the old Blackwood coal mine, about 30 miles from Troy. Instead of teenagers with flashlights, Tanner discovered something that would rewrite this town's history. Deep inside the mine, behind a makeshift stone barrier, lay an alcove. Behind that, wrapped in time and dust, were the remains of two individuals, their faded blue diner uniforms still recognizable after 4.5 decades. A tarnished silver locket inscribed with the initials SM confirmed what Tanner feared. The Martinez twins had finally been found. The discovery sent shockwaves through the investigation world. Forensics teams arrived within hours. DNA testing verified the identities, and the manner of their deaths, sudden, violent, brutal, suggested a personal attack, not a random crime. Soil samples discovered traces of a unique industrial lubricant used exclusively by Blackwell Mining in the 1970s, and that clue would prove pivotal. Investigators cross-referenced workers with access to the mine. That's when one name kept rising to the surface: Howard Keller, a maintenance supervisor at Blackwell Mining in 1974. To the community, Keller was the picture of ordinariness, a retiree who volunteered at the local church, who drank coffee at Murphy's Diner, who had always offered condolences at the Martinez vigils. To the family, he was just another neighbor. But evidence was beginning to paint a much darker picture. The name sat quietly in the file for decades: Howard Keller. To most people in Pike County, he was invisible in the way long-time locals often are. Always there, never questioned. He had worked maintenance at Blackwell Mining back in the 1970s, lived less than a mile from the Martinez family, and attended the same church picnics, the same football games, the same community events. He had even joined one of the early volunteer search parties. At the time, no one thought twice about it. Now, 45 years later, detectives were looking at Keller through a completely different lens. And the more they looked, the more unsettling the picture became. When investigators re-examined archived employment records, they discovered Keller had unrestricted access to the Blackwood mine shafts during overnight hours in 1974. He often worked alone. He knew the tunnels. He knew which entrances were unmarked. He knew when no one would ever think to look. But that alone wasn't enough. Cold cases don't reopen on suspicion. They reopen on evidence. And evidence, for the first time in decades, was finally surfacing. Forensic analysts found trace fibers embedded in the twins' clothing. Fibers that matched upholstery from a 1972 Ford F-100 pickup truck. That model, that year, that exact interior fabric was registered to just 3 owners in Pike County in the mid-1970s. One of them was Howard Keller. As investigators dug deeper, another chilling detail emerged. A witness statement from 1974, long dismissed as unreliable, resurfaced. A teenage boy had reported seeing 2 girls arguing with an older man near Pine Street that night. He described the man as wearing a mining jacket and smelling like oil. Back then, the statement went nowhere. Now, it pointed straight at Keller. What truly broke the case open, though, was something far more personal. In 2018, Keller's estranged daughter contacted authorities after discovering a locked metal box while cleaning out her father's storage unit. Inside were yellowed newspaper clippings about the Martinez twins, police sketches, and most disturbing of all, a diner receipt dated October 17, 1974, timestamped just minutes after Sarah and Rebecca clocked out. Keller had always claimed he was home that night, The receipt said otherwise. When detectives finally knocked on his door, Keller was 83 years old. He didn't resist. He didn't ask why they were there. He simply sighed, the kind of sigh that sounds less like surprise and more like relief. The arrest happened quietly, but the impact was anything but. News spread through Pike County like a lightning strike. The man everyone trusted. The man who had stood shoulder to shoulder with the Martinez family at candlelight vigils. The man who had shaken Robert Martinez's hand and told him, "We'll find them." It was him. Neighbors struggled to reconcile the image they knew with the monster investigators were now describing. Some refused to believe it. Others felt sick realizing how close evil had lived, how comfortably it had blended in. At the police station, Keller initially denied everything. But evidence has a way of cornering the truth. After hours of questioning, after being confronted with forensic data, witness statements, and the contents of that metal box, Keller finally spoke. His confession was chilling in its simplicity. He said he had offered the twins a ride home that night, something he had done before when they worked late shifts. He said an argument broke out in the truck. He claimed one of the girls threatened to report him for touching her. What followed, according to Keller, was panic. He drove to the mine. He said he didn't mean to kill them, but he did. And for 45 years, he lived freely among the very people whose lives he had destroyed. When the Martinez family was notified, the moment was not one of celebration. It was devastation reborn. Maria Martinez collapsed when detectives confirmed the identities of the remains. Robert sat silently, staring at the floor, his hands clenched so tightly his knuckles turned white. They had waited nearly half a century for answers. Now that they had them, the wait was unbearable. The trial drew national attention. Courtroom seats filled before sunrise. Former classmates of the twins sat beside reporters. Old neighbors avoided eye contact. Keller appeared frail, hunched, grey, a stark contrast to the powerful fear he had once commanded over two teenage girls. Prosecutors laid out the timeline meticulously. The ride, the argument, the mine, the concealment. Forensic experts testified that the twins died within minutes of each other. They never stood a chance. When the guilty verdict was read, the room fell silent. No cheers, no applause, just tears. Keller was sentenced to life in prison. A sentence many felt was too short for a man who stole 2 lives and an entire family's future. Outside the courthouse, Maria Martinez spoke publicly for the first time in decades. "My daughters were not forgotten," she said. "Justice took time, but it came. The town of Pike County will never be the same. Streets once walked without fear now carry memories that can't be erased. Trust was shattered. A truth long buried finally clawed its way to the surface. And the lesson remains painfully clear. Sometimes the most dangerous people aren't strangers. They're neighbors, they're helpers. They're the ones who show up to search parties. Before you leave, remember this. These stories matter. They honor the victims, preserve the truth, and remind us why justice must never sleep. If you believe these stories deserve to be told, if you believe victims deserve a voice no matter how long it takes, subscribe now and stay with us. For 45 years, Sarah and Rebecca Martinez existed only as photographs pinned to corkboards, as names whispered at vigils, as questions no one could answer. They became a mystery people talked about in the past tense, until the past finally spoke back. Justice came late, pain came early, and nothing about this ending feels complete. Because while a man was held accountable, 2 young lives were never given the chance to grow old, to fall in love, to argue with their parents, to live the ordinary futures that were stolen from them on a quiet Alabama road in 1978. Their family waited almost half a century for the truth, and when it arrived, it didn't bring peace. It brought a deeper understanding of loss, the kind that settles in your chest and never really leaves. This case reminds us of something deeply uncomfortable. Monsters don't always announce themselves. Sometimes they wear familiar faces. Sometimes they help search. Sometimes they live right next door. And that truth forces us to ask, how many stories like this are still buried? How many families are still waiting for answers that time refuses to give easily? Sarah and Rebecca were not just victims of a crime. They were daughters, sisters, friends. They were loved, and they mattered, then, now, and always. If there's anything to take from this story, it's this. No case is ever truly cold as long as someone still cares. As long as someone keeps asking questions. As long as someone refuses to let a name fade into silence. If you believe these stories deserve to be remembered, if you believe justice should never have an expiration date, stay with us, subscribe, share their story, keep the light on. Because somewhere, someone is still waiting to be found. And sometimes, the truth is closer than we think.